we can also hear you. Thank you.
All right, and seeing the presence of a quorum, I'll call this meeting of the Union 26 School Committee to order. And everybody is here in person, so we do not have any check-ins to do right now. So we have one remote member tonight, Tillman, and one member currently absent, Allison McDonald, but she should be here shortly. What's that? Yes, no Ron Menino. If you're wondering where we had another with the empty seat, that's Ron Menino from Pelham School Committee. His term ended, and so he's no longer a member of Union 26. So the first item is public comment.
I'm sorry, point of order.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have a minutes taker?
Yes, so Marquita is taking them virtually.
Remotely. Perfect,
Yep.
thank you.
So Ben, do you want to run public comment, or?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Either way. Less people tonight. All right, so we'll start with the in-person public comment if folks want to come up. And so anyone who wishes to make a public comment can come forward. You'll have 3 minutes, and that's pretty straightforward. You'll have 3 minutes, and then move on to the next person.
Hi, my name is this on? Yeah. Kind of? My name is Jenna Schwartz, yeah? Okay. I'm a parent and a community member and a longtime Amherst resident. I realize the order of business tonight is selecting an acting superintendent, but there are several other things I would also like to speak to in addition to that pressing decision. One is that Mr. Demling has not said a word expressing empathy with the LGBTQIA students at ARMS who have suffered from abuse and bullying. Doing so does not conflict with there being a Title IX investigation. Doing so simply shows the community, and most importantly the kids, that you care. That you sat here 2 nights ago and listened to parent after parent, teacher after teacher, administrators, nurses, and therapists, and haven't said a word as the chair of the committee is jarring. I urge you to put aside your concerns for policy and protocol, school liability, and the challenges of chairing the committee in the midst of this crisis, though I know those are all real concerns, just for long enough to acknowledge the suffering that has occurred inside of our middle school. And I appreciate those of you on the committee who have made statements to that effect. They matter. Secondly, I asked on Tuesday if someone could clarify the relationship between district leadership and the school committee in hopes of understanding who knew about the Title IX complaint when it was filed, not to mention the many complaints that went unheeded that preceded that one, as reported by the graphic, and when they knew it. I remain confused about this. It is very difficult to believe that nobody on the school committee was aware of these complaints. But if truly no one was, it would be so helpful to know that. The lack of hearing this addressed naturally sparks a sense of unease and suspicion. If you truly didn't know, why would you not say as much? It's difficult to trust in the school committee as a body when there is no unified statement about these things. Third, I'm confused and horrified as to why the 3 counselors under investigation are on leave while Assistant Superintendent Doreen Cunningham is not, while the investigation results are pending. Is her having hired those staff members not legally sufficient for her to also be placed on leave, especially considering that she's implicated in the pending investigation? So that's just, I don't even have a word for what that is, but it's just so not okay. And to know that she's, I'm going off script here a little, but to know that she's still in a very powerful position in our school district in the midst of what's going on is just unthinkable. Lastly, ARMS currently has no principal and no guidance counselors, and Ms. Cunningham continues to serve. It's related to my last point. There might only be a month left in the school year, but that is not a reason to leave the situation unaddressed. And there are kids, a lot of kids in that building who need support right now. So I would really love to hear what the plan is for providing it to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
My name is MJ Schwartz, and I'm speaking as a parent, step-parent, and a non-binary transgender adult who is very concerned for the children in our school district at this time. While the focus of tonight's meeting is filling the role of interim superintendent, my intention is to keep circling back around to the children who have been directly harmed by the conditions at Arms and the ineptitude and inaction with which their incredibly brave reports of this have been met. So far, I have not heard a single thing from Michael Morris, Doreen Cunningham, Hector Santos, Tanya Cabrera, or Delinda Dykes that indicates even the slightest indication of remorse for the harm they have caused to these children. In fact, Doreen Cunningham had the audacity to stand before the parents, teachers, and staff who gave their heartfelt testimonies Tuesday night and said that not only would she not step down, she will not apologize. Likewise, Peter Demling has expressed concern for the district's liability, anti-APEA sentiments, and made several vague references to having his words twisted and how hard his job is, yet has never expressed any concern for how hard this is for our LGBTQ+ children. The adults in charge seem to have forgotten that public education is first and foremost about children. As we move towards summer vacation, I urge all of you to keep your eye on the ball. Right behind the children, our next concern should be with the educators and the staff, the nurses, the people who have come forward to support these children unflinchingly in the face of what I understand to be a very hostile workplace environment, coming into meetings like this and being met with signs saying, this person practices witchcraft, which I take to be code for, I can't come up with a single fucking thing of substance to say, so I'm going to smear her. I urge all of you to keep focusing on the children, the parents, and the educators at Arms. This problem will not disappear over break. Unless all of these individuals are fired, Arms students, teachers, and staff will have to go back into the same toxic environment in the fall. And the people who are causing this toxic environment are counting on the public's attention to wane. Do not let this happen.
Thank you.
I'm still Allie Wick-Slim. I recognize that the focus tonight is on hiring an acting superintendent, and I recognize the challenges of that process given the time constraints that you're up against. That said, this person's going to be tasked with a challenging job, made more challenging by the fact that the school and the community are in crisis, and ultimately, this person will be tasked with the well-being of many, many children. I would not use this process that we've landed on to hire a babysitter for even my 2 kids. I would never hire a babysitter without ever being able to talk to them and ask them questions. And unfortunately, I would not feel comfortable allowing this school committee under this leadership, which as others have talked about, has shown a stunning lack of compassion and prioritization of district liability over well-being of children, to choose a babysitter for my child, and yet here you are tonight choosing the person who's going to look over thousands of children in crisis. I understand that you're not going to be able to answer these questions now, but you will have an open conversation this evening. And if you want to rebuild trust and transparency, I have 3 questions I believe we, the community, need answers to. 1, was anyone on the school committee aware of the Title IX complaint filed on April 14th at the time of the school committee meeting on the 25th, where these complaints were brought forward and Mr. Demling suggested that they might be unverified and could be false? The damage that that did to people who had bravely come forward is immeasurable, by the way. If you don't clarify that the answer to this is no, I'm going to assume it's yes, that somebody here knew as you sat here and discredited those statements. We know that Mike Morris knew about the complaints at the meeting when he claimed that there weren't any. You don't need to wait for the results of the Title IX report to address that he lied to his community and lost trust. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about that problem? And last night, During public comment, you had an ARPS employee who works with children repeatedly, publicly, claim that these complaints about harm to LGBTQ plus children have nothing at all to do with LGBTQ plus children, and then return to the building and the children that he said that about. What do you think that might have felt like to those children? What do you think that sends them as a message when somebody who sat here in public and talked about how their experience has nothing to do with them is back in their building as supposedly a trusted resource? What are you going to do about that? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a public comment?
This is very hard for me. I don't do public speaking. However, my son couldn't be here tonight, and he had wanted to make a comment, so I'd like to make his comment on his behalf. My name is Erica Wise. My son is Japhet Wise. He's a senior at the high school.
Excuse me, can you lean forward towards the mic a little
Yes,
bit more?
I can.
I'm sorry.
My son is Japhet Wise, a senior at the high school. He said, as a student, it does not matter to me all this arguing over who's going to be superintendent, who is at fault, what happened. As a student, I just know that the bullying happens, and I don't see the response that is needed from the administration. And during this meeting last night, I don't see any discussion of how to address that problem or what is going to be done for the students. And I just would like to leave you with that. We're talking about hiring a superintendent, and not once in any of the discussion in the emails have I seen any addressing of how this is going to be addressed to help students. I also have a son in the middle school who is witnessing bullying and did as much as yesterday and has no idea who is safe to report it to. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? You can come forward.
Hello, my name's Chris Hockman, parent of 2 students in the district since 2016, 2015 actually. I'm here tonight. Thank you for having this emergency meeting in this emergency. I wanted to come to advocate and focus on the choice at hand, and that is who will lead for a temporary period as superintendent. I have looked at the candidates, and I'm here to advocate for you to ask you to choose Dr. Hollins. The reason being, my background, raised as a naval aviator, pilot in the Navy, so I view things from an aviation perspective. So I liken the district to a very large aircraft that is experiencing an emergency right now, hence this emergency meeting. We've lost our pilot. Our pilot is incapacitated. He has been experiencing a turbulent flight for the past several years. It has taken a toll on him, and now is incapacitated and can't fly the aircraft. We have thousands of passengers, students. We have hundreds of crew on this aircraft, teachers, staff, all the people that take care of our kids. And we have some people on the airplane that have gone to flight training. They're on paper qualified to be pilots. They've been asked, and they've said, in these conditions, I don't want to fly this plane. Take me out. I'll stay on the plane, and I'll trust that you'll put a good pilot in the position to land this thing with my life on it and my kids in it. Okay. We've got some other folks who are not qualified pilots that are very competent individuals that have said, in the absence of a pilot, I'll fly. Consider me. And we have one person who has said, who's on the plane, well, will be on the plane as a candidate, has said, I'm willing, and oh, by the way, I have flown the plane. I have flown the plane for many years. And there are people that are concerned, the kids are scared on the plane, the passengers. Their loved ones on the ground are scared to see how this plane's going to land, who's going to fly it. that's the parents. And the crew wants to have somebody that they can trust to fly that plane. That's my analogy, and then using that rationale, please pick Dr. Hollins to fly this plane and land it in the near term. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a public comment?
Hi, my name's Allegra Clark. I am, again, a graduate of this high school and a Wildwood parent. And I just wanted to say I actually came here from the Wildwood Multicultural Fair, which was happening tonight, and I wanted to share a moment that I thought was really special. The students were about to have a fashion show, and our principal got up on stage and talked about how Wildwood is a welcoming place, and people are, students are encouraged to be who they are, whatever that looks like for them. And that was a really important message to hear from our school leadership right now. All the parents that I talked to in the course of the evening expressed a lot of concern about what's been going on. And I had one mom say to me, I'm so glad that the middle school move isn't happening right now, because I'm terrified that my daughter would go into that situation right now. So I hope that we can have the same message from our district leadership, so that the students know that they're okay to be themselves in this district. And I did just want to, I wrote a comment as well. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it or not, but I did want to plug Dr. Baptiste as a candidate. I have some knowledge of his tenure on the school committee, and I understand there was a bullying incident while he was on the school committee a few years back. And from my perspective, I think he did well trying to get that student's needs met. And I think that is important, and an important perspective to have in this time and in this moment that we're in right now. So that is my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to step up and make a public comment?
Hi again, I'm William Schur. I just wanted to speak and say that I do think that Ms. Hollins is probably the most credible person that's on the list as far as someone from the outside. I have a hard time understanding, and none of us really know what happened, what's going to be in the Title IX investigation, but I would imagine in a work environment where you have the people working amongst you, you would also hear things or talk about things. So I have a hard time understanding how anyone in the upper administration could not have had some knowledge about what was going on. So I think I would be cautious about having someone that's already in the upper administration to move up into the superintendent role. I do think that Ms. Holland has ran other, schools, and so it sounds like that she would be qualified. And I also think that she has some life experiences that would lend a different lens on the issues that we're dealing with right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Nancy DePross. I'm a grandparent of 2 children who are currently in the school, one of whom I'm guardian, and my kids also went through the school system. I want to speak against Ms. Hollins as a person that would be someone that you would consider. I don't think you know her. I would ask, if you're considering her seriously, that you look at what her experience is in other districts before you make a decision to hire her. I would suggest you talk to administrators. I would suggest you talk to union people, talk to administrator unions, talk to the teachers union. And I know, Peter, you won't want to do that, but I think if we want to heal this district, we need to really know what she's like on the inside when she's running someplace. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a public comment?
Hi, my name is Kara and I teach band here and at the middle school, and also percussion at the middle school. As an employee aware of a lot of hires that need to happen in the immediate future, I'm a bit relieved that we're in a position of having 3 candidates who all seem really potentially strong. And I think I'd feel comfortable with any of them at the helm. I just wanted to say that I've had the opportunity to work with Trevor Baptiste in the last few years and have found him to be exceptionally kind and thoughtful and intentional. and also very capable of holding the complexities of intersectionalities in his mind and navigating difficult conversations with grace, which will obviously be a necessary skill for whoever is in this position. I also agree that specific expressions of empathy and love for the middle school students who've experienced harm from everyone in any position of power in the district are important right now and always. And we'll just say that it's never too late or too often. And to any students in either school that I work in, I'm happy to listen to anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to make a public comment? All right, so I'll pass it back to, oh, wait.
Or
no,
the
we have
voicemails and written.
We have these written, are we?
Any voicemails?
Yes, that'll take me a minute to pull up if
Okay.
you want to read first or.
Yeah, I volunteered to read the public comments, the written public comments. I have it here, so, well, you should still scroll, but
Right.
do you want to bring up the?
Yep,
I'll let you do that first.
there we go.
Oh, okay. Dear school committee members, I'm writing to recommend and urge you to appoint an individual from outside the system who has superintendent experience. In my opinion, none of these names options have neither the skills nor the temperament to lead the district out of this crisis. I would also urge you to demand that Assistant Superintendent Cunningham resign or be fired. She is a liability to the district. She will not be able to guide the district out of this crisis. Respectfully, Kip Funch. Good afternoon. I'd like to add my thoughts on the acting superintendent appointment. In my view, the following qualifications are crucial for the job. 1, someone with experience leading a workforce and or community through healing and restoration across diverse identities, including LGBTQIA+. 2, someone whose work experience includes a deep knowledge of adolescent development, trauma, and best practices for improving the well-being of children in grades 7 through 12, given the series of extremely difficult situations at the 2 upper schools and the post-pandemic return. 3, an outsider who hasn't worked closely within central office and doesn't know or hold allegiances to the district personnel who have or may have been involved in mishandling the current crisis. In addition to that, please add an immediate charge for the person you appoint to protect and repair the harm done to the children at the middle school. My best, Bridget. Dear School Committee, I think the interests of the school committee and region will be best served in this challenging time by appointing an interim superintendent with no history with ARPS. Therefore, it is my hope that you will appoint Dr. Hollins. My preference does not indicate any reservation about the ability of Drs. Baptiste or Slaughter to handle the job, and I appreciate their willingness to serve. Thank you, Sarah Marshall Amherst. Dear members, now that I know the 3 remaining candidates, I would strongly recommend and urge you to appoint Susan Hollins, interim superintendent. Respectfully, Kip Funch. Hi, I think it is essential that the acting superintendent is an outside person who will bring fresh eyes and who has the skills of being a superintendent, such as Susan Hollins. She clearly has the credentials and has done this. I believe Mr. Slaughter should remain in just his position to support the superintendent. I don't believe that Trevor is in that position of being an outside person having served on the school committee. Judy Funch. Leverett, Mass. With by far the most relevant and direct experience, Dr. Susan Hollins seems to be handily the best candidate for the interim superintendent position. Thank you, Susan Rupp. Hello all, I am writing as a parent of a Wildwood kindergartner with concerns over the recent events and hope that a successful acting superintendent will be identified. There are 2 candidates who are not currently employed by the district who might be ideal so as not to have a person in a high administrative role taking on additional responsibilities. I would rank the candidates as follows. 1, Dr. Trevor Baptiste. In my opinion, he has shown an ability to navigate crises related to bullying in the past as a member of the school committee. Additionally, he has experience with community engagement, which I believe is very important at this time to restore trust. Having been on the school committee previously, he understands the way the school committee functions, as well as the relationship between the committee and the superintendent. 2, Dr. Susan Hollins. In my opinion, there is logic in appointing a person who has experience handling Title IX complaints. Dr. Hollins is the only candidate with previous superintendent experience. 3, Dr. Douglas Slaughter. In my opinion, I would prefer to see someone outside of the district, but I believe Dr. Slaughter could fill the role. I worry about adding additional responsibilities to the finance director, especially as the town is in the thick of its budget process with implications for the school district. Best, Allegra. Dear RSC, I am writing to provide comments related to the selection of an acting superintendent for ARPS. I appreciate your diligence in seeking candidates that are qualified to step into a tumultuous situation and that are ready and able to help move our district toward the goal of providing excellent and safe education for all our students. In reviewing the 3 candidates' resumes and doing additional diligence through public records, I endorse Dr. Susan Hollins for the position. I do not know her personally, nor have I met her. Based on her resume, qualifications, and demonstrated abilities, she is the best qualified. She is the only candidate with the noted certifications required to be a superintendent. She is the only candidate that has been a superintendent, educator, and worked with numerous schools to turn them around or enhance them for the betterment of the students. In reviewing the other candidates who I have met each 1 to 2 times during my tenure as a parent and booster at ARPS, they do not appear to have the certifications or experience needed in this pivotal time in our district. I have stayed objective when looking at the facts, their resumes, and statements of interest, and I believe the best candidate is Dr. Hollins. I hope you will concur. The acting superintendent should be someone that is not already engaged in other important work for the district, such as being a finance director. The district would not be well served taking a competent finance director who has the technical skills to handle the finances of the district to be an acting superintendent. Why would we want to replace two positions with an acting finance director and an acting superintendent when we have an excellent certified and qualified alternative? In addition, in reviewing Doug Slaughter's resume, his background in education is one of engineering, data management, and finances, not that of education administration. I also feel strongly that it would demonstrate poor judgment to fill the acting superintendent's position with a former chair of the RSC that was subject to a hostile work environment lawsuit from a former superintendent of this district. Although Dr. Baptiste may not have directly named in the lawsuit, I was not living in the district at the time of the lawsuit, so I'm unsure of the circumstances. He was head of a committee that had oversight of the superintendent and the work environment. In addition, although Dr. Baptiste has many degrees and work experience, none are related to education administration. Why should the district gamble on a candidate with no direct experience in being a superintendent or does not have the right educational experience when we have a candidate who does? Our district deserves a fresh perspective and someone who has had experience in turning around a district. Now is not the time to select an acting superintendent that will just tread water and follow the status quo, waiting on Dr. Morris to return. Now is not the time to pick someone with the right affect or the right demeanor because that seems the easiest path. Now is the time to begin the process of change. We must proceed in creating a safe learning environment for our students and not wait for an indeterminable amount of time to implement changes that will improve the quality of education of the students. Thank you for your commitment to our students, our educators, our staff, and the district. Your selection is the opportunity to set the tone and direction for our district. Regards, Stephanie Hockman, Pelham resident. To whom it may concern, we write to vote for Dr. Susan Hollins for the interim superintendent. Reading the CVs and statements, she seems most qualified, and we need an outsider to come in and clean up as the community heals. We would also ask that Dr. Morris not give a clean pass. He needs to be held accountable if he was negligent that led to harms experienced by middle school students. Some questions we would appreciate knowing the answers to. 1, how long is Dr. Morris on leave for? 2, in the event that Dr. Morris resigns or gets fired, would the interim superintendent become a permanent superintendent or will we do a national search? This should be communicated clearly to the community members. We urge you to be fully transparent and keep everyone updated. Thank you for all the work you are doing. Please reply to confirm the receipt of this email. Sincerely, Lily Kim and Dennis Melatish Ortiz, parents, ARHS. I am proud to be an Amherst resident of 30 years and to have had the good fortune of having my children attend kindergarten through high school in the Amherst and Amherst Regional Public Schools. I'd like to express my gratitude to the members of the school committee for their service to the town and to our children and families. I am extremely dismayed by the article and the graphic that I learned of in the Gazette and through a posting in Amherst Neighbors regarding current arms leadership and current or possible investigations. From the little I know, it is clear that a full investigation of the facts is in order. I fear, however, that with the absence of our current superintendent, we may be temporarily put in the position of having someone from inside the administration at the helm during investigation. Given the circumstances, I believe that would be unethical as well as extremely divisive and disruptive. We must look outside the district to fill the position of interim superintendent in order for this disruption to be dealt with as quickly, decisively, and ethically as possible. Sincerely, Evelyn Rada. Public comment. Our family strongly prefers candidate Susan Hollins for the position of acting superintendent for ARPS. It is important to have someone familiar with the struggles of the LGBTQ community, and Dr. Hollins fills this role. As building level leaders at ARPS, we have the privilege of spending our days in the company of your children, supporting the amazing educators who teach and care for them. It's joyful and rewarding work, but it isn't always easy. It can be challenging, chaotic, and sometimes heart-wrenching. This is one of those times in the ARPS community. We are coming together today to acknowledge that fact and to state unequivocally that every administrator, faculty, and staff member in the Amherst, Pelham, and regional schools is dedicated to holding your children close in support as we move forward together. Every school has caring, loving teachers, paraeducators, counselors, coaches, and others who are ready to help. Please feel free to reach out to your school's office anytime. And to our LGBTQIA+ students and families, we pledge our unconditional, unwavering support and solidarity. Our actions must speak louder than our words in support of our LGBTQIA+ community who have been continually marginalized and oppressed. As district leaders, we must lead with courage and compassion. Together and in collaboration with faculty, staff, students, and families, we pledge to act with immediacy, and integrity to restore trust and rebuild our community so everyone feels acknowledged, appreciated, and accepted for who they are. Please remember that you are loved, you are valued, and together we are ARPS. In community, Elizabeth Burns, Amherst Early Education Center Administrator. Derek Shea, Crocker Farm Principal. Jennifer Smith, Crocker Farm Assistant Principal. Tammy Sullivan Daly, Fort River Principal. Julio Fernandez, Fort River Assistant Principal. Mickey Darling, Pelham Principal. Nick Yaffe, Wildwood Principal. Allison Estes, Wildwood Assistant Principal. Diego Sharon, ARMS Principal. Talib Sadiq, ARHS Principal. Samantha Camera, ARHS Assistant Principal. Mickey Gramacki, ARHS Assistant Principal. David Slovan, Summit Academy Principal.
Thank you, Jennifer. Give me 1 second.
My name is Emily Jones. I'm a paraprofessional at the middle school. I have a fifth grader at Wildwood who identifies as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and I have an eighth grader who was in seventh grade at the middle school last year. I am leaving this voicemail to state my support of Dr. Susan Holland being chosen as our interim superintendent. I want to thank all of the candidates who stepped forward for this role to support our district at this time. But when I read Dr. Holland's statement, I was really blown away just by how perfect they seem to be for our need in our district right now. The statement included that they have specific administrative training in LGBTQ plus issues. They're well experienced in supporting students and staff. They said they have statewide administrative training for complaints and investigation. I was blown away by how perfectly qualified they seem to help us through this time. They seem fair-minded, professional, knowledgeable, experienced, and on top of all those things, most importantly to me, Dr. Hollins has no ties to our district whatsoever, and that will just completely, vanquish any question of bias or cronyism, which it's a concern for me, and I know that it's a concern for other people in our district and community as well. So I'm really excited. I want to thank Dr. Hollins for stepping forward and really coming to be a hero for us. I feel like we would be well led by this person during this time. So I urge the school committee to vote for Dr. Hollins to take on this role. Thank you.
And I'll turn it back to Peter.
Okay. So on to our next agenda item, which is ARP's temporary superintendent appointment or other title. I just want just for the minutes, Alice McDonald is now here, member of both Union 26 and the region. There's a couple of I'm sorry, I'm going to pause, and if the committee is okay with reopening public comment, I'm going to guess perhaps there's another request for public comment.
I'll take it.
Sorry, I misunderstood the process. Hi, my name's Amy Kalman, she, her pronouns. I work here at the high school, have for 16 years now, and there's bad feedback from the mic. Sorry if that's bothering other people than me. I live in town, and I have kids that have gone through the elementary school, middle school, high school, are currently at the high school. So I was at the school committee meeting on Tuesday for 3.5 hours, and then at the break needed dinner, headed home, and I am a little bit still stunned that we're at this place. We're at this point as a community of appointing a superintendent out of a field of candidates, and no disrespect to those people. I am thrilled that we have people who have qualifications, who are willing, who seem to be available to take on this challenging role. However, in my work as an educator, I've never been plunged into a situation even remotely equivalent to this. As a person who has children in the district, I've never been in a situation where the leadership has suddenly been so disrupted and then might be determined in such a quick, feels reactionary process. We've had implications, and we're currently investigating hiring processes in this community. We've had a history of problematic hiring practices in this community. I feel very uncomfortable. I'm extremely anxious and nervous about the potential, or even the slight possibility, that we could be jumping, because it's an emergency, jumping into a situation without really mindfully having considered the possibilities. And the process, somehow when I left at 10 of 9, had to go to bed, came back to school the next day, I received emails that said, we have candidates. And very rapidly, those candidates were asked, and the process seemed to be names popcorned out into the room. And then those candidates said yes or no. And now all of a sudden, we are appointing candidates without having met them, heard even video footage from them, having them Zoom into a meeting. I'm shocked. We don't know how long they'd be with us and be leading us. We haven't heard their voices. We haven't read their nonverbal communication. How do they relate to people? How do they relate to adults? How do they relate to children? How on earth can we choose a superintendent, even if it's just for 5 days, whom we have not met? I do have the honor of having met Doug Slaughter. Thank you for being here this evening. As far as I know, the other candidates are not in the room. Stand up if you're in the room. Okay, Trevor Baptiste is here. Okay, so I have not yet met or worked with Trevor Baptiste, although I am aware he's served on the school committee. Susan Hollins, I don't know. The community should know our superintendent. And at a minimum, we've looked at hiring practices and having an interview committee that has diverse roles and voices, including student voices, parent voices, involved in that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any more in-person public comments?
I'm going to cede the time to Nancy.
I'll allow it.
I was really glad to hear, so I'm Nancy DePross again. So I was really glad to hear the previous speaker, because I was sitting in my seat thinking exactly the same thing. And what I wonder is if, in fact, there's such a cry for an outside person to come in and take over for the next whatever period of time, have you reached out to the Superintendents Association to find out if there are other retired superintendents out there who might be people you could interview and consider for this job? I think it's really a mistake to have one local person who would have read about what's going on here, because she's in Greenfield, step forward when in fact there are retired superintendents out there who are also capable and able to come in here. So I really, second what she just said about like not meeting the person, not talking to them, not knowing who they are, and making a decision. There clearly is a cry from the community and from the building leadership folks to bring somebody in from outside. So I think if you're going to consider doing that, I think you need to look beyond Ms. Hollins and see what else is out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Milka Shabazz. I live here in town in South Amherst. Similar to the previous speaker, am concerned. I recognize from the previous meeting and hearing from the attorney the need that the committee has to put someone in place as an acting school superintendent. However, I just feel for the difficulty in moving like that without the opportunity to look at all things. I'm hearing of things in terms of one of the candidates' previous investigations of going on around school funds. So, you know, it just seems that we are in a place of how do you move really quickly and not have a chance to really hear and vet people adequately, or do you take time and really, you know, have a little more deliberation in naming your acting person? So I don't envy the position that you're in, but I know from the standpoint of integrity and knowledge of the process that Dr. Trevor Baptiste certainly deserves a deep consideration and a deep look from you, and I hope you will be able to do that as you take time in making a good decision on an acting school superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more in-person public comments? So now I'll turn it back to Peter. Sorry, go ahead.
Could we check in with Amherst Media just to make sure they're still up and running?
Sure. Amherst Media, or how are we doing?
All's good on our end.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the mic feedback? Is there anything you can do about that?
We can try switching out the mics with a different one. It could be just the audio.
If there's any additional public comment, we can feel free to.
You can use that one.
There's a spare one right there.
Nope.
Doesn't sound better at all.
Sorry
Out of
about
time? Well,
You want to use this stand?
July is my first day on the job, but
You're doing great, thank you.
uh,
You want this stand?
yeah.
I think that was small.
Hello, hello. Oh, that's better.
Much better. Thank you.
Thanks very much. First day on the job. Good job. Okay, so we'll continue public comment for anybody who would like to make a public comment. And if not, then we'll close public comment. Okay, so our order of business for tonight, just reading the agenda item, is ARP's temporary superintendent appointment or other title. So a couple of reset the table comments just for anybody who is joining us midstream. So at our last meeting, Tuesday night, late Tuesday night, we had a long discussion and we decided a few things. One of them is we all committed to appointing acting superintendent this evening. We had a long discussion and then selected 8 names of candidates that we wished to reach out to see if they were interested in the position, and if they were, to please send us a statement and their CV for input. We decided not to have Q&A or interactions this evening, so I understand some of the candidates are here, and we thank them for their interest for sure. We won't be able to do engagement like that. I certainly want to thank first as well all the 8 candidates. So we have 3 that responded yes, and so those are the 3 that we are reviewing this evening. But we got a lot of very nice messages from the people who were declined. I believe they were all ARPS employees with pretty authentic and impressive messages about their dedication to our community and our public schools. So I just want to thank them for that. I also want to publicly thank our 3 finalists, so Dr. Baptiste, Dr. Hollins, and Dr. Slaughter. Very few of us will ever go through a public application and evaluation process like this, and to hear your name being commented on in a way that supports your candidacy or doesn't support your candidacy is a difficult thing, and so I just want to acknowledge and appreciate that. So I think that's all I had for intro. Yeah, Jennifer?
With the chair's permission, could I just share a few other bits of background info about how we got to this point in the process?
Sure.
For those who were here yesterday or who weren't here yesterday, we talked about acting versus interim superintendent. So we currently have a superintendent. Dr. Morris's contract is in effect. He's still our superintendent, but he is on a temporary leave. So we need to appoint an acting superintendent because our district has to have a superintendent. We can't leave this position empty for very long. Our friends across the river in Northampton were dinged for not having a superintendent for like 5 days. So this person is not considered an interim. An interim is, from what I understand, and our attorney confirmed this on Tuesday, an interim is someone who's going to be in place while you're doing a search. An acting is just someone in place while the person in that job is unable to be there. So we're appointing an acting for hopefully a very short term. That's why we're doing this so quickly. And we decided as a group not to invite the candidates in because it was such short notice that we felt, at the time we had 8 candidates, we felt it wasn't fair to tell them that they must come in on Thursday. On Tuesday, decided that they must come in on Thursday if they had other plans, if they were out of town and they weren't able to be here. We thought it would be inequitable to ask candidates to come in. So those are the things I wanted to add.
Excellent. Now that's excellent context. It was a late night, so I don't remember all 6 hours. So, are there any other members who have anything to add just from the? Yeah, Margaret.
I'd just like to make a statement, and I will tell you that I wrote this. I'm probably going to add a couple things on at the end. So last night we heard public comment, which was about egregious actions. It was very hard to hear. I can tell you personally, I did not know about the Title IX issue that was done before the April 26th meeting. Maybe that was my fault and I missed some communication, but I did not know. We also heard some serious allegations about some staff last night. Tuesday. It was a very difficult meeting. Tonight we have to make a decision about hiring an acting superintendent. I haven't made a decision yet, but I've been thinking about it and thinking about what are the things that I'm going to consider as I listen to what people have to say. There's the receipt of the Title IX report, and that's very important, but there are other things we have to think about. This person, for some period of time, is going to have to oversee a number of things. They're going to have to oversee the new building project. They're going to have to oversee contract negotiations. They're going to have to oversee the new initiative to create the grade 7 to 12 administrative structure. They are going to have to deal with budgets. They are going to have to close out this school year and plan for the next school year. And they're going to have to go to every school committee meeting for 3 school districts, Amherst, Pelham, and the region. So those are things, all things I'm going to be thinking about tonight. And I want to say, I'm so sorry. You know, to listen to you talk, I had no idea. You know, I have grandchildren in the school, but it was overwhelming.
Thank you, Margaret. Ben?
Yeah, also thank you, Mark. I rarely speak from the perspective of an ARPS employee, but when it comes to the sense of urgency that we have right now, I'll tell you flat out, it's dangerous to not have a superintendent in place. There are potential disciplinary matters that could cause other people harm and discomfort in the district. And if we don't have somebody who can make a decision on the fly, we have serious problems. I won't go into detail, but I will tell you firsthand that it is problematic to not have a superintendent in place, even for a day. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. So before we proceed on the structure of delivering the motion, I guess I just wanted to add, the reason why that we aren't tonight, and we didn't 2 nights ago, and we haven't at any meeting yet had a discussion about everything that's been provided to us in public comment, is because we haven't been legally allowed to do it. So our committees have to follow open meeting law, which is when there's a topic on the agenda, we can discuss it. Now we can kind of push the bounds of that. So for example, if the crisis of LGBTQIA plus student safety is relevant to our deliberations about acting superintendent, we can talk about that to the degree that is. If we all have thoughts and feelings about what should be done about that at the middle school and the other schools in our districts, we're not legally allowed to say that. In fact, my speaking about this right now, I'm pushing the bounds of open meeting law, and I take personal responsibility for doing that. And if the state wants to ding me on it, that's fine. But I feel like I just had to say cover a few items here. I also want to acknowledge a couple of public comments that are very, very legitimate questions. Did you know about any Title IX investigations or other complaints about LGBTQIA plus student safety at the April 25th school committee meeting? No, I did not. School committee members do not get notified about Title IX investigations. Now, I can only speak for myself because I don't know if individuals proactively called administration and asked about this topic beforehand. But your default assumption can be that any school committee member, that's the first time that we heard about it. And what we heard at that meeting were public comments, and forgive me because I can't remember every single detail of every public comment at that meeting right now. But the major theme was that there was conversion therapy going on at the middle school, and that was the first that I heard of it. In addition to just talking to a couple of people that weekend who said that they saw on some listserv talk about an anonymous source sharing with parents about conversion therapy by counselors at the middle school, which was obviously a shocking thing to hear. And so that's why when the superintendent discussed the matter at superintendent update at the April 25th meeting, I commented and questioned, said those are very severe allegations. And we are in this environment where we had just concluded a failed middle school principal search and been told that we had validated allegations against candidates that turned out to be false. And so that is a very difficult environment in which to identify what is true and what is not true. That is fundamentally different than saying, I don't believe kids and parents and staff when they express concerns. This was I don't know how many days it was, but this was way before the graphic article. And what else? Right. And so that's why I was one of 2, I believe, school committee members to comment or ask any. I was the only one to ask a question directly to the superintendent, and I said, do you have other investigations? Do you have any evidence? Because that's what I wanted to know. We then had a discussion later on in the meeting when we were talking about the failed middle school principal search about how difficult it is for the school committee to parse out the truth when we know that sometimes there are rumors and sometimes those rumors turn out to be false. That is fundamentally different than saying everything we hear is a rumor and everything we hear is false. And since then, we've had no legal opportunity to discuss it. I was just discussing with a couple of my colleagues before the meeting that we have to have a meeting about that as soon as possible. And as discussion about that was going on, I was talking to my colleagues about we need to get this on the agenda. Then our superintendent unexpectedly went on leave. And since last Friday morning, that's been the 24/7 focus of my attention as Union 26 chair. And just to clarify, I'm not the chair of the region. So I don't speak on behalf of the region. I don't speak on behalf of topics that are specific to the middle school. I only ever am in this role when there is something like this. It's usually the superintendent contract evaluation or contract or other contracts. You know, and this would be obviously a case like that. I am probably violating open meeting law. I want to say that very clear because I want to be very honest about what I'm doing. And if I get pinged for that, that's fine. You know, and the last thing I'll say, and then we'll get to our agenda, is, you know, in terms of empathy, I'll tell you, I really struggle with balancing my role on this committee and how much energy I want to spend defending my personal reputation. I don't care that much about my personal reputation, to be fair. I'm very comfortable in my own feelings and values with regards to LGBTQI plus people. I have my family. I have family members. I have professional colleagues, and I don't feel the need to cite chapter and verse to defend how I feel about that. Should I've slowed down over the last 7 days and tried to articulate a statement that it was as articulate as Ben's was on Facebook earlier. You know, maybe, but I mean, I haven't known how to do that when I felt like I've also been kind of under attack for things that I feel are not reasonable. So that's all I'll say about that. I don't say that to change minds, but I just did want to try and reply because it's been extremely frustrating for me, and I'm sure it's been frustrating for a number of committee members that we haven't had the opportunity to discuss this at all. The freedom, the ability to talk about this at all in a legal manner. So I'm sure we hope to do that soon. Yes, sir.
This has been a very difficult time. I've been in Amherst for a long time. This is my second term as a school committee member. And me as a person, I've been an elementary school teacher, professor, school librarian. I've been a CEO. I've been parachuted into emergency situations at both schools and corporate entities. I have watched kids wandering the streets in New Orleans after Katrina, and then put in place programs to make sure that they were taken care of. My teaching experience, my educational experience, always had the foundation that the kids, our kids, not their kids, our kids, they had to feel safe, they had to feel loved, they had to feel accepted, and they had to feel cared for. If you couldn't do those things as a teacher in your classroom, then you really could not teach. Those were foundationals. You had to make sure that those things were taken care of. If all of you heard what those 4 things, those are the foundations of any good relationship. And being in the classroom is all about a relationship. Quite frankly, when I left the meeting on Tuesday, I was shaken by everything I heard. I was disturbed. You know, kids are something that's in my blood. And knowing that there were kids out there who were hurting, or been hurt, or been harmed, and that I, as an individual, could not do anything about it at the time that it occurred or prevented it, was very, very, very deeply disturbing to me. I think I speak for this entire school committee. All of us are committed to this community and to our kids. Being put into this position of having to select a superintendent, an acting superintendent under these conditions is certainly not ideal. But we are charged with doing that by statute, protocol, procedures, etc. We do not have the luxury of going out and looking for someone and interviewing them and bringing them in and doing the regular. We just don't. And I hope that is understood. And we certainly do not wish to be in this position, but this is the ball that we've been handed.
Okay, thank you, Irv. Now we will proceed with the item of business, which is so technically what we have to do here. So we need to what we're driving towards in this discussion is voting on a motion that identifies who the acting superintendent is going to be and the terms of that appointment, right? And so so we need to select one of Dr. Baptiste, Dr. Hollins, or Dr. Slaughter, and then we also have to articulate the broad outline of the term of the terms. When I say terms, I mean the items that that our attorney articulated in a sample motion with regards to for how long, when do we review, what's the compensation adjustment, with final contract details to be negotiated at a certain date, because we're not going to be able to articulate an entire contract tonight. But we will be able to appoint a superintendent, acting superintendent tonight. So I guess the question is, you know, how would we like to do that? We could just go down the line, and I don't have to start with you, Sarah Beth, even though we can start a line anywhere, and just share our initial thoughts and feelings on either of those things, either who it should be or what the term should be. We can just focus on the candidates and try to identify the candidate first. We can focus just on the structure of the motion. Does anybody have any feelings about how they would like to proceed? Yes, Jennifer.
I think we should start with choosing a candidate. And I'm ready to begin whenever you are.
Okay. Margaret?
Question, do we have to have a motion in order to discuss all of the candidates?
So I guess two answers. One is whether you discuss and then make a motion and then ask for more discussion versus making a motion and then discussing the motion is really a matter of style of a committee. You can do it both ways. We typically discuss, and then when people are ready, then we make the motion. It's an open question about how do we get from 3 to 1, right? So I suppose as we go down the line, and Jennifer, I can start with you. I suppose as we go down the line, if you have thoughts or feelings on that, you could do it, the different options, right? You could just say, I move that Mickey Mouse be the acting superintendent, then see if there's a majority or one. Yeah, Margaret?
Follow-up question?
Yeah, sure.
If we make a motion and during the discussion somebody changes their mind, do we have to, or if enough of us change our mind, do we have to then go through the process of withdrawing that motion in order to make a new motion?
So it depends on how it goes. So once a motion is on the table, it has to either be disposed of, that is voted up or down eventually, or it can be withdrawn if either the full committee votes that it be withdrawn, or if the person who made the motion wants to withdraw it and nobody objects, the friendly withdrawal.
Thank you.
As it were. So with that, Jennifer, if you want to start us off.
Sure. I want to start with talking about Dr. Susan Hollins. Dr. Hollins has very impressive credentials and experience, and she looks great on paper. But I just want to remind members of the public of the history of
Oh, I'm sorry. Could I interrupt you
Sure.
for one moment? I just did want to, there's one more reminder that I forgot to make before we start discussion. I'm sorry to interrupt you. So our attorney did advise us that we should be cautious about sharing information that isn't public and validated. So for sure, over the last 24 plus hours, I've received a lot of calls and emails and texts and people wanting to talk, which I appreciate because it helps round out the picture. But a certain percentage of that input isn't, aren't news reports or things that are publicly accessible. It's people's personal experience, and sometimes that feedback is very positive, and sometimes that feedback is very negative. And so, if we were to be, if members share very negative things about a candidate that aren't public information, it could potentially expose us to liability for doing damage to that person's professional reputation. If there are things that are public, like if it says, oh, there's a news story that Mickey Mouse broke into the CVS last night, then you can reference that report and say that's an issue of concern because it's a matter of public record. But I just did want to put that caveat out there so we know how to manage that. Sorry, Jennifer, go ahead.
Sure. So Dr. Hollins had proactively emailed the school committee with her resume and cover letter prior to Tuesday's meeting. So we had already received her information before our last meeting. And at our Tuesday meeting, as we were discussing who to add to our list of potential candidates, Ben suggested adding her. And at the time, I thought that was a good idea. But in the light of day the next morning, I realized that I can't support appointing someone as acting superintendent whom all of us have never met. Which is not to say I could only support someone who all of us have met, and it's not to say I couldn't support someone I personally haven't met, just that, like, none of us have met her, and so, therefore, I don't think I could support her. If the situation were different and we were a committee screening resumes of people to bring in for an interview, that would be a different situation. But given that none of us have met her or talked to her, I can't support her as acting superintendent. That's all I wanted to say to start.
Steve or Ben, which direction of the line would you like to go? Ben, Steve, you're up. So if you have any introductory comments or opinions on anything about the topic that you would like to share about candidates or whatever.
I'll try and do this pretty quick. While public comment was going on Tuesday night, I had no names in my head or I had no idea what direction we would be going in. But during public comment, I was just looking up, and in the middle of all the tension and emotions going on with the public comment and all the people packed in here, I saw a purple shirt come in through the back of the room, and he just kind of looked around, immediately saw what the situation was because he's experienced this before, and he just glided through the room, worked his way through. Nothing was going to bother him getting his way. He was paying attention, but he really was. He was just taking it all in, and it was amazing just to watch him. And then he parked himself over in the corner, and I said, man, I wish I could nominate Dr. Trevor Baptiste. And then thanks to Jennifer, I learned that I could, and so I did. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. My comment is mainly about why I feel that if it's for this particular job at this particular time, it's too much of a risk to be appointing an external candidate that is a candidate who's not currently an ARPS employee, which I know with our three candidates leaves you with one. And the fundamental reason is that what we know about the external candidates is it's limited to their CV, their personal statement, any searchable public information, or like I mentioned, other personal experiences that may have been shared with us. And so what results from that is a persona, right? A persona that we have a limited basis for determining the truth of. And so I'm much like what Jennifer said about if something looks good on paper, it could be good, but you don't know, and so you run the risk of it not of it not working out like that. And so I feel that no matter how appealing that someone may appear, that we run a substantial risk if we don't already have a sufficient amount of knowledge and experience, knowing that that person can execute at the schools. And it's no, I want to be clear. This isn't a criticism. This point is not a criticism of the qualification or prospects of Dr. Baptiste or Dr. Hollis. It's just the reality of the evaluative situation that we face, that with the urgency of the timetable that we have. And it's always the case with any job search that you're making an educated guess, but in this case, it's so compressed that risk is much higher. And I really don't think that our district at this moment in time should take on that kind of risk, especially not right now. I'm not willing to roll the dice on someone who I don't have already a high confidence in terms of their capabilities. And I think Margaret mentioned it at the top with regards to the Title IX investigation. I feel like we need to make absolutely sure that the full results of that Title IX investigation are given to the public and the school committee as soon as possible, as soon as they're available. That the acting superintendent acts on those results to hold accountable whoever needs to be held accountable, and that the school committee also acts on those results to hold accountable whoever needs to be held accountable with the individuals who are in the scope of our authority. And in parallel to that, I feel that the acting superintendent needs to start working right now with the school committee to, as Ben put it this week, and I'll just gonna embarrass you, Ben, because quote from your Facebook statement, to carefully review our safeguards in order to proactively prevent emotional damage to those who exist within the most vulnerable populations in our school communities. And so you want somebody who isn't going to take a significant amount of time to get up to speed, to get acclimated to the environment. There are a lot of complications in our district with regards to management and operations and personnel and programming. And we need to move now. And it's not just the middle school. I know all the reports that we've heard so far are primarily coming out of the middle school, but when we talk about proactively preventing emotional damage to our and ensuring student safety, that's all of our schools, right? And so you need to, and all of our students in all of our schools. So you need to know about ILC and AIMS. You need to know about Cominates. You need to know about our preschool program. You need to know, that the individuals and have those relationships so that as you are going, apace with this, that you can implement the changes that we need effectively. And I think that that the manner in which Doug has shown that he operates, he fits that bill. And it's not just his calm and steady, even-keeled temperament that a number of people up here have talked about. It's the way that I've seen him systematically follow procedures, that he does things in a by-the-book, straightforward, impartial manner, and kind of a technocratic way sometimes, but I mean that in a good way. And he's completely as far away from the scope of what's going on with Title IX as could be. So that's really why I feel like for an acting superintendent in this moment, with what our district needs, he really fits the bill. I'll also say, and just be honest, that I would have very strong concerns about appointing someone without a superintendent license, given the license issues that our district has faced in the past. I think we discussed that pretty thoroughly last time, and I know people have different feelings on that, but that's another reason why I feel like Doug would be a good candidate this time. I have other points about, but I don't need to share them all right now, so I'll stop there.
It's being in a position where you have to make a decision upon on a leader for a school district under these sets of conditions is very not ideal, very uncomfortable. You don't have this, you can't go through all the systematic processes that one would normally go through. So you're thrown back to what you know. And very often that comes down to who you know. So I know Dr. Baptiste. He was on the school committee, has been here. I know Doug because I've worked with him for years. I watched Doug come up through the system. As I did with Dr. Morris, watched him and knew him as a classroom teacher, watched and followed his career and was part of his career because I was on the school committee at various times during his career. I think about the qualifications that are needed right now, and quite frankly, going through an onboarding process with a new person to this system is something that I would not want to have happen. So I'm left with two people who I know. And both of them have great qualities. But I, having had an extensive experience with Doug, think that he is the best person for this job, for this time. And I'm saying that because I'm also mindful that this acting could go on for more than 3 months. There's a possibility of it going on for 6 months or a year. When I say year, a school year. I mean, there are some really incredible knowns that we know. And those unknowns that we don't know are frightening. And so I do not wish to leave the schools in a position where we do not have some leadership, and that leadership has some bedrock experience with our system.
Allison.
Thank you. So first, I want to apologize for arriving late. I was traveling for work this week and drove 4 hours to get here tonight. So I apologize. One too many pit stops on my drive. So, and I apologize for not being here in person during the really difficult and emotional public comment the other evening. I was listening. I was watching watching on Amherst Media while listening live, and I appreciate the many people that came out to share their deep concerns for the well-being of our community. I don't think I have much new because I share the thoughts that Jennifer shared about needing to know or at least have met candidates. So for me, the fact that Dr. Hollins, as much as she looks good on paper from an experience perspective, we've never met her and we have to make a decision ASAP, and so that's concerning to me, even if this is a 60, 90-day acting stand-in. So for me, that's concerning. I think I also share some of the feelings that I heard tonight from public comment about how this feels very urgent, and it feels overly rushed for what is a very important position in the district. I agree with that. And yet, as our attorney articulated the other evening, and many of the other school committee members have articulated, we have to. We are required by law to have a single point person on the books as an acting superintendent. So we don't really have much choice in that. Were we to not have a superintendent who's on leave, and actually just a superintendent who had left, and we were looking at an interim that potentially could be much longer, I would feel very differently. I would want to have a much more thorough process and slow it down a little bit so that we get to know people, even if it is only a 1-year appointment. But we, as said, we don't have the time. So for a lot of those reasons, and I think sharing some of the comments that I've heard from others who have spoken already, the fact that we know Dr. Slaughter. He has the trust of many in our community, including myself, for his long tenure, both to the town of Amherst, but also to our school district. He's deeply connected with many of the tasks and responsibilities that Margaret articulated, sort of beyond the Title IX report receipt, that I think, at least to get us through the end of the school year and the first part of the summer, that I favor Dr. Slaughter for that, because we know him, we trust him, and he has the experience to get us at least through this school year. Thank you.
My turn?
Yeah, go ahead, Margaret.
This is very, very hard, to be here in front of all these people and to talk about other people is very, very hard. I said I hadn't made a decision. I think I have made a decision, and I think that decision would be for Dr. Slaughter. There's not a lot I can add to what other people have said. One thing I will say is that he does have his superintendent license. He decided on his own, I don't know if he wanted to be a superintendent, but he made the effort to go out and get his superintendent license. And I think that says something positive about Dr. Slaughter. Just a minute. The other thing, the thing about we have to do this now, there are places in the system right now where decisions need to be made about hiring. And that cannot be done without a superintendent. And bringing somebody in, I've heard great things about Dr. Baptiste, but he does not have any administrative experience in schools, which doesn't mean he couldn't get up to speed, but I feel like having somebody who knows people, knows how things work, has good connections with the people who need to do the work. This person is a supervisor. This person is an overseer. This is not the person who's personally necessarily going to do all these things. He has to work with the committee for the elementary school. He has to work with all of the school committees. And by the way, he's been to many school committee meetings. I've sat because he has to come, and he doesn't just come and talk about the budget. He has to come and sit there and listen to all of us until we talk about the budget. So he has some familiarity with what goes on besides the budget. So I don't know, there's probably other things I meant to say, but I'm gonna stop.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, I don't want to get too repetitive here, but I would say for most of the reasons stated, and especially the licensure piece, from my perspective as one of the Pelham reps here, I think that I would also go with Doug Slaughter.
Sarah Beth.
Okay, so I will also put my hat in for the Doug Slaughter. He's currently licensed, which is a huge plus.
You might want to change your mic there. I don't know if that's picking up on there. It's a tiny one.
Okay. So licensed, has experience leading large departments, which takes a specific skill set and one that we are going to need in running not just there's lots of departments that are going to need oversight. Working in finance requires that you have the ability for foresight and to see where things are headed and what steps need to be taken to kind of drive the train where it needs to go. And I think Doug Slaughter has done a good job with those things. I also noticed on his CV resume, that he was a football coach for many, many years. And having kids, be athletes and played sports myself, having a coach that has stayed around for that long means that the kids have a good relationship and that he cares and has seen kids through hard times and, helped them learn how to grow and how to succeed. And so I think while his current position is not student facing, I do think that is a skill set that he also has. And having worked with him on other committees, his consistent follow through and attention to detail are impressive, to say the least. So I think Doug Slaughter would be excellent acting superintendent for the time that we need him to.
Thank you. Ben or Tillman, whatever you want to.
Oh, we'll go.
Tillman, if you
Tillman, you with us?
Yeah.
I should probably take my laptop off of mute. Now, go ahead. Why is there still no volume? Are you talking?
Is he muted?
No. Are you muted on your end? It doesn't.
Is your microphone on? Not your.
Yeah, it's the volume. I guess I'm gonna go and then we'll figure out.
I'll try and bring it up on my PC too.
Yeah. All right, so without explanation, I'm just going to apologize for bringing up Susan Hillman in the first place, or Hillman, but whatever. But yeah, just based on what I said earlier, we need somebody who can hit the ground running and has familiarity with people in every department, and we need somebody that people in those positions, as department heads, et cetera, already know and have a rapport with. So this isn't the most ideal situation, but we need somebody like right now. And so with that in mind, it's Doug Slaughter is the one person that I can think of. I mean, he's also very steady. I haven't heard a lot of controversy with him. And I believe that based on conversations today with a lot of folks in the district trust him. And we need somebody who's trusted right now, and I trust him, so that's who I got.
All right, thank you, Ben. I'm going to try Tillman from my computer. That doesn't already work. Do you want to mute yourself? 1 second, Tillman. Sorry, we are technically challenged here at school committee. I can. I'm just going to up my volume and then readjust the mic. Give me 1 second. All right, why don't you say hello?
Okay.
Can people hear that? I think so. Okay. Tillman, say A, B, C, D, E.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes. Okay, great. All right, go ahead. Yeah, yep, we got you. So you can go ahead.
All right, so I'd like to thank all three candidates who have agreed to be considered tonight. I have been on this committee for just 4 days, and I do not know any of the candidates personally. I would like to point out that we as a committee decided on a process where we did not want to ask for candidates to meet with us and speak. So I do not think it is right to hold against any candidate that we don't know them. Of the candidates, Dr. Hollins is the one candidate with experience as a superintendent. In addition, we heard from numerous public comments that there is a desire to bring in someone who is neutral in the assessment of the situation and taking corrective action. Therefore, I will support Dr. Hollins for acting superintendent. Thanks.
Thank you, Tillman. Okay, so how would we like to proceed from here? So we could well, let's see. So first, Ben, why don't you bring up the motion template for the, I'll give you a moment to start projecting that. So we have a rough draft of a motion that says that who you're appointing and then for what term. And so that makes it, because it's in the same motion, it makes it a little difficult to do it separately, right? Where we say, we appoint a candidate, and then afterwards, here's the contract. So, so just read the, I'll try and, I'm gonna try and bring that up, so that I can read it. Sorry for the technical issues. Okay, so, so the first line of the motion is the committee that's moving it. So each of our committees will have to make this motion, because we're two committees. And we say appoint, and then the name of the person as acting superintendent of the, and if it's a Union 26 motion, we would say the Amherst and Pelham school districts. If it's the, and when the regional school committee makes the motion, it would be of the Amherst Pelham Regional School District. Effective immediately, the next line is about the term. So this here says for a term ending X number of days from today's date. I suppose that could also be rephrased to cite a particular date. And then at a compensation rate of an additional some number of dollars per week. Our attorney suggested that it would be reasonable to include that in the main motion because if the person is going to accept the appointment, they would probably want to know what the compensation is that is associated with it at this point. Provided the appointment shall end sooner upon the return of Superintendent Morris, so if our superintendent returns from leave, or a majority vote of the committee, with final contract details to be negotiated and executed by a certain date. So our attorney also sent us a couple of example template contracts to fill in, and there were 3 or 4 pages there of details. We're not going to be able to do a 3 or 4 page motion of all those details and hash all that out tonight. That's why that last line is with final contracts to be negotiated and executed. So if we pass that motion and then we contact the candidate and the candidate says, yes, I agree with that, I accept that appointment, then as of that moment, then the acting superintendent is in place, even though we still have to go and negotiate all the last particulars. So that's the basic structure. It's not nothing we can't talk about changing if we feel strongly about it. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about that. So this is what I was talking about. We have the name and the structure in there. So you could make a motion to appoint one of these candidates, but then we'd have to talk about how are we going to fill in those other values. Yeah, Ben. Sorry, Ben and then Sarah Beth.
Sarah Beth.
Okay, Sarah Beth.
I would like if we could talk about the bottom half of the blanks, like how long and like the contract details, because I feel like it's not fair to ask to try to appoint someone if they don't know the rest of these things and moving forward. So, my request would be that we, try to just come up with the contract details. Not all of them, but a little bit better than before. Yeah,
I tend to agree because if we are able to settle on all of so if we use this template, if we're able to settle on the number of days or a date and the compensation dollars and a deadline for if we're able to set those 3 values, then we can start making motions that I'd like to move to appoint a certain candidate, and then all those numbers would be the same as we go through the motion. Ben and then Margaret.
No, I'm good for now.
Yeah, you're good, Margaret.
So if we were to say something like for 90 days or the return of Dr. Morris, with that term to be reviewed if Dr. Morris does not return in 90 days, can we do something like that?
Yeah, so I see Jennifer's hand, so I'll go to you next. So I when I was trying to get a template motion out of our attorney, I had suggested something like that, like with extensions to be negotiated or agreed upon. I suppose you could, he did include that specifically here. I guess there's 2 ways to go about it. One is you could articulate that explicitly like that and say, for a term of this, with extensions to be negotiated and extended. On the other hand, it's also implied that, if we get to, say this is 90 days, if we get to day 70 and at that point we feel like we're going to need the acting superintendent for longer, then we could we could just, pass another motion and make him acting superintendent for the next number of days. In other words, you could just keep extending, but without it being explicitly called out there. Unless you had a follow-up, I'm going to go to Jennifer and then Irv, and then Allison. So Jennifer?
I have some suggestions for the things to fill in, but so let's see. I think that we want to be clear that this is a temporary appointment. So I think it's important. I mean, it's got the number of days in there. I was going to change it to a date, but I'm going to make some suggestions. I like the idea of. I'm just going to suggest until August 30th, which is obviously the end of the summer. And perhaps we don't need to add this, but I know this is not approved by our attorney, but something like with the option to renew for another month with notice given by the 15th of the previous month, or something like that, if needed past August 30th. This is super awkward, but I'm just going to throw this out there. If we do appoint someone who's already an employee, I'm just throwing out the idea of $3,000 per month, just like a nice round number. That's equivalent. So this is not going to be for a whole year. This will be for a few months, and $3,000 per month is equivalent to around $36,000 a year. If it's an existing employee, we would have to talk to that person about what portions of are they going to keep doing their current job, or are they going to let go of some of that stuff? It just seems like a number we could start at and talk about. I guess I'd like to hear input, but then also I might be ready to make the motion.
All right. So the suggestions, so I have Irv and then Allison. I'm just going to recap. So suggestions are, instead of having a number of days, we just set a date. Did you mean August 30th or 31st?
30 days has September. Is it
31st?
30th?
I don't know if there was something special about that day. So that was an idea. And then also the idea of an annualized $3,000 per month, which per week is $692. So that would be $692 and 31 cents. So that's you're talking about ballpark. And then something about along the lines of what some language with regards to extension. So Irv.
It seems that we somewhere in this contract, this potential contract, it says shall serve until the superintendent returns. So when I think about why are we saying August? Why can't we just say this contract will be enforced until such time as the superintendent returns? Now, if you're saying, well, we have to have some certain date in there, well, there isn't a certain date because you already have said that it's until the superintendent returns.
Yeah.
So unless there's some legal reason for that, I don't understand it. The other thing is, are we going to be asking this person who's already a member of the staff, who is already receiving a salary, are we saying that particular salary that he is now receiving is going to be set aside, and this new one is going to be, or are we going to say this is in addition to? Because that wasn't clear.
Right.
So
I think I can.
All right.
I think I can probably.
Because $3,000 a month was like ridiculous.
I can try to answer that, and then I'll go to Allison and then Jennifer. So in terms of why a date, so I think it's probably for two reasons. One is that this is an agreement, so we're asking for a commitment, right? We're asking for a commitment from the candidate that we want you to be, you're signing up, right, to be acting superintendent for at least this amount of time. And so I think if it was, just my 2 cents, I think if it was unending, that's kind of a tall order to ask of somebody. If they feel like, okay, I could do it for, so say we say August 31st, that's, a little over 90 days, 100 days maybe. That's different than we want you to be acting superintendent, in unending. I think that it's a different ask. It also, I think, is just my 2 cents. I think it's beneficial for the community to let them know that the school committee really looks at this as a short-term thing, and that If we say August 31st, and if we get close to August 31st, and this is, our superintendent has not returned from leave yet, we're going to know more by that point about a number of different things. We may know a return timetable. We may know, it's going to be a different situation. So at that point, we may want to make a different decision. We want to think about different things. And so that at least gives the committee another checkpoint, right? To come and say, okay, we're going to reassess at that point. I think that's the best I can do to answer that question. So in terms of additional, yes, so it says at a compensation rate of an additional dollars per week. So if this was, so actually that's a good point. This was just the exact language the attorney gave us. But if this was going to be a motion for someone who's not currently an ARPS employee, that would be at a compensation rate of, and so you would strike on additional and you would talk about, I think we were just getting in the habit of talking about 3,000 or so because most, majority of people who spoke were talking about an ARPS employee, Dr. Slaughter. Allison.
So your last comment was actually where I was going, and I have a suggestion. But I also want to say I support the suggested fill in the blanks, Mad Libs that Jennifer had suggested. So, but my question is, since we're talking about some of these specifics, I think, do we have to do this full motion? Can we first move on a specific candidate and then continue the discussion about the rest of this?
So,
just given that two of the candidates are external and one is internal, and so this motion and these stipulations would be very different if it was an external appointment.
Right. So I don't know if I can say definitively no, we can't do that. The only examples I talked about with the examples that the attorney gave us were this. His feeling. So initially, when I was saying, "Hey, is this okay?" He added that compensation rate because he's like, if you're going to appoint someone at the same time, you want to be able to specify there. And so it's like, for example, say it is Dr. Slaughter. If we move to appoint Dr. Slaughter and then we fill in these variables, he's going to he's going to want to have that information, right? As opposed to if we just say we appoint Dr. Slaughter without the variables. Yeah, go ahead. Follow up.
I mean, I understand the same time, but does it have to be literally the exact same second? Like, could it be two subsequent motions?
Right.
I just
I might
feel
be
like
overcomplicated.
I just feel like in terms of the compensation, we could spend a lot of time talking about two different compensation structures when we don't really need to, and just in the interest of time.
Right.
I don't know.
Jennifer, you were next.
Yes. Let's see. I think Allison has a point that I want to come back to, but I wanted to address some of Irv's questions. I want to have a date to assure the community that we intend this to be short-term and that we intend it to be time-limited. And we don't know when Dr. Morris will return. Maybe he doesn't know when he's going to return. And we don't know if he will return. We hope he has indicated that he intends to. But if he, at some point during this acting's position, if Dr. Morris, for example, says, I'm going to come back in May, that's a long time, and we might decide to get an interim, which actually would fall under a majority vote of the committee. I would feel more comfortable having a date, even if there are many variables in here and many ways that the acting job could end, but I would feel more comfortable having a date. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion. Maybe you can type while I'm talking.
Jennifer.
Sorry, I can't make a motion.
So if you're gonna, when you make a motion, it has to be the very first thing that you do. So before you do that, I just want to, because I think most people, I'm getting the sense that we're kind of agreed about the general approach here. So maybe if we could have a little more discussion, it might be a little cleaner. So the $3,000 thing, if we do that at the same time, I don't know if we're going to. So that works out to $692 a week and 31 cents. I don't know if you could round that up to 700 or 750 or something. Might be a little cleaner. But Ben, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so in terms of the date, like the date I think is important, like Jennifer said, to allow the public to know that this is a temporary thing, right? That there's a finite end to it. But at the same time, I just want people to bear in mind that we are hiring this person at will. So like, yes, to the end of August, but also we still have the ability to I don't want to say end that, terminate that, but we also have the ability to put Mike back in when he comes back, I guess is the cleaner way to say it.
Right. Well, that's my understanding of the language. Provided the appointment shall end, the appointment shall end. It shall end sooner. That means it does. It shall end sooner upon the return of Morris or a majority of the committee. So if next week we're like, Doug, you're gone.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. If it ends up being done. I still don't have a super clear understanding of what a clean way to do that parse it out thing is, but. It's just a little confused in my head, so if anybody has any other comments, or if Jennifer, you...
What are we trying to parse out here?
So we had talked about... so it occurs to me...
School may start on the 30th.
Something is occurring to me. Hold on. You know what? I think school starts on August 30th, 2023. I don't know if that's relevant or not. Just a point of information. Sorry. I mean, I was originally thinking 90 days. I don't think it's ultra critical. If we approach that date, and Dr. Morris has not returned yet, then we're going to be talking about this one way or the other, whether it's the 29th or the 30th or 31st or the 1st. So I'm agnostic as to which exact day.
We'll see if somebody has like a motion with a date.
Yeah, we will wait for that. Yes, Jennifer.
I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
Ben, perhaps you could type while I'm talking, because I'm sort of making this up. I move that the Amherst Pelham Regional School Committee appoint Douglas Slaughter as acting superintendent of the Amherst Pelham Regional School District, effective immediately.
Second.
Oh, I'm not. He's gonna. I'm just waiting for Ben to catch up because I want you to take out Amherst and Pelham because I'm not on Union 26. So take out the Amherst and Pelham.
Yep. I'm getting there.
And then just Amherst Regional School District. You could maybe take out the
slash.
Yeah, and the brackets around Doug's name.
District.
For a term ending September 30th, 2023. At a compensation rate of an additional $700 per week. Provided the appointment shall end sooner upon the return of Superintendent Morris or a majority vote of the committee, with final contract details to be negotiated and executed by, oh, I forgot about this one. By, Thursday, May 25th. Thank you.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Jennifer, seconded by Irv for the Regional School Committee. I can't turn my head around at the moment. Ben, do you want to just read the motion for those of us who don't have eyes in the back of their head? Just to reset the table.
Still doing editing. So read the whole thing?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Now that it's all baked.
So I move that the Amherst Pelham Regional School Committee appoint Douglas Slaughter as acting superintendent of the Amherst Pelham Regional School District effective immediately for a term ending September 30th, 2023, at a compensation rate of an additional $700 per week, provided the appointment shall end sooner upon the return of Superintendent Morris or a majority vote of the committee, with final contract details to be negotiated and executed by Thursday, May 25th, 2023.
Thank you. Okay, so open it up for any discussion. Allison?
I just have a question because when I recall on Tuesday there was conversation about if it's a current employee that we'd want language about sort of do they continue their current duties or not, and I don't see that in the motion.
I had the same question you did.
Yeah.
I asked him about that, and he said it's within the contract. It's part of that longer contract that will. It's part of that language, and so
Thank
he's
you.
like he said that we could explicitly do it because there's no need. It's superfluous to what's in the contract.
Point of order. Can you just mention who is the he you're talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark Terry, our attorney, Mark Terry,
Thank you.
school committee's legal counsel. Is there any discussion, comments, questions? Sarah Bess.
It's just a question, not a comment in any way. So if for some reason Doug said September 30th feels too long to me, I am willing to do August 30th. Not making any assumptions, but can that then be changed with the contract? Or is it locked in because that was the motion?
So we're all making this up on the fly. My thinking is that the cleanest. So let's say we pass this motion, right? And it just so happens that Doug Slaughter is right there. The next step for our committee would be to reach out to the candidate to see if they accept the appointment under these conditions. We wouldn't have to go make a phone call. We could just ask him to walk up to the table. And if he says yes, I'm fine with all those terms, then that's it. If it could be so. And in the scenario you're talking about, he could be like, well, I'm fine with it, but I would really prefer that date be August 31st. Then we would have to pass another motion to supersede that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Or let's see. I had another thought, but I lost it. That was the other thought. So the other thought would be if we don't want to have to do that, we could invite Doug up to tell us the value or to see if he's okay with these values. However, that comes pretty close to talking with the candidate before they're officially, and that feels counter to what we said we were going to do. So I'd rather not do that. I'd rather deal with the motion administration if we have to do that. I don't know how you all feel. I'm seeing nodding heads. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Regional Chair, I'll turn it over to you for.
So we'll go roll call vote. Seeing no further discussion, I will take a roll call vote now. We'll start with Sarah Bess.
Sarah Bess, aye.
Margaret.
Margaret, aye.
Allison.
Allison, aye.
Irv.
Irv, aye.
Peter.
Peter, aye.
Tillman.
I would nay.
Stephen.
I'll abstain.
Jennifer.
Aye.
And Ben, aye. There's one abstention, one nay, the rest ayes. 6?
7.
7.
7.
I can't see that far. Good. So 7 yeses.
Passes.
It passes. The motion passes, not unanimously.
Okay. So now we're in the awkward limbo of what is actually the reality before Union 26 does anything. So just as a reminder, for Union 26, it's the same motion, except you say, I move that Union 26, and instead of saying Amherst Pelham Regional School District, you say the Amherst and Pelham School Districts.
Outstanding.
And everything else is the same. Anyone in Union 26 interested in making a motion? Yes, Margaret.
I move that the Union 26 appoint Douglas Slaughter as acting superintendent of the Amherst and Pelham School Districts effective immediately for a term ending September 30th, 2023 at a compensation rate of an additional $700 per week, provided the appointment shall end sooner upon the return of Superintendent Morris or a majority vote of the committee, with final contract details to be negotiated and executed by Thursday, May 25th, 2023.
Second.
Moved by Stancer, second by Hall. Any comments or discussion from Union 26? Okay, seeing none, we will take a,
Actually, there's one.
that is to say, Allison, yes.
Sorry. Is the $700 a week additive to the regional? Yes.
No, so my understanding is no. Okay, so I appreciate the written attempt for written input, but this is not a discussion with the public. It's a public meeting in the public, not with the public. This is the way it is, and you are absolutely allowed to hold sign. I'm not trying to discourage you from holding signs. So the way that compensation works for employees that are shared between the 3 school districts, ironically, Dr. Slaughter could probably explain it best. But as I understand it, it's a percent distribution based on a metric. I believe the metric for most cases is number of students. But what happens if someone has a salary of $100,000? Then, if the region has 53% of the metric in question, which in this case might be students, then it's 53%. Anyway, so you don't have to specify which district is doing it. We're making the same shared agreement, understanding that the 3 districts split. So for example, even when we make this Union 26, we wouldn't have to parse it out and say, for Pelham he gets $30 and for Amherst he gets $670. Yes, Allison.
I understand that.
Yeah.
And when we've looked at it, we've in the past, like for Mike Morris's current contract, we looked at a single contract. And then made a motion to approve the single contract. In this case, we have 2 separate and independent motions, each of which says $700 a week. So that's my question.
Right.
We don't have a single contract that says $700 a week.
I think Doug would be comfortable with that.
Right. Yeah, Jennifer.
Could we somehow modify this motion to say at a compensation to be determined jointly with the region?
Yeah, I mean, so the only reason why we're specifying the compensation explicitly in the individual motion is because Mark Terry advised that would be a good idea for the candidate to have that information when they're making their decision about whether to accept the appointment. In this case, it's probably darn obvious what the committee's intention is. And so when Doug lets us know if he accepts the appointment, he'll know that that's our intention. And then, so if using that suggested language that you were saying, then we could work that out in the contract final details.
I believe it was at a compensation to be jointly determined with the Amherst Pelham Regional School Committee.
Yes, Jennifer.
I realize I'm not on Union 26 and that this is a Union 26 motion, but I just want to, for the sake of clarity, since I was the one who came up with the $700 a week, I wanted to explain how I got that number.
Sure.
Is that okay? So I admit I was just sort of like pulling round numbers out, and I came up with 3,000. I just came up with 3,000 per month, which is where the $700 a week comes from. $3,000 per month, as I said, is equivalent to $36,000 a year, which we don't expect this Doug to be in this position for a year, but that's the equivalent. So I'm just going to be totally transparent and say Mike Morris's salary is around $170,000 a year. For comparison, our assistant superintendent salary is around $138,000 a year. And as far as I can tell, Dr. Slaughter's current salary is around $116,000 per year. So if we annualized everything, Doug's salary annualized would be $152,000 a year, which is less than Mike is making, but that's good. That's not a bad thing. So that's why I feel like this is a fair compensation rate.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any further discussion from Union 26? Seeing none, why don't we just take a roll call vote just to be super clear? Allison?
Allison, aye.
Irv?
Irv, aye.
Margaret?
May I ask a question first? You've changed the language of the motion that I read.
Oh, true. So we're, all right, so I will declare the roll call of that vote invalid because we did not change, we did not officially amend the motion. My bad, chair, bad. Okay, so we changed the language, so we need to move to amend the motion. So I move to amend the motion on the table as with the language as currently presented.
Oh, yeah, second.
Second.
All right, Irv, did you say second?
I said second.
All right,
Oh.
I'm going to give that one to Irv, Allison.
Yes.
All right, moved by Deming, seconded by Irv. So this is the motion to amend the motion to update the language to what we're looking at. That's what we're voting on, and then we'll have to vote the amended motion. Okay, this is just to say yes to the amendment. So unless there's any further discussion, Allison,
Allison, aye.
Irv,
Irv, aye.
Margaret,
Margaret, I.
Sarah,
Sarah, I.
and Peter, I. Passes unanimous, 5-0. Now we are back on the main motion. Is there any further discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote on the main motion. Sarah?
Sarah, I.
Margaret?
Margaret, I.
Irv?
Irv, aye.
Allison?
Allison, aye.
And Peter, I. That is 5-0. It's unanimous. The motion passes. Okay. So just to bring everybody up to speed to where we are at this second, we passed the motions to appoint Dr. Slaughter as the acting superintendent. Both motions have passed the committees. Now, if our committees then contact Dr. Slaughter, and Dr. Slaughter accepts the appointment under the conditions that we have moved, at that moment, this is according to Mark Terry, at that moment, then he's the acting superintendent. Then we will figure out a way to finalize the contract details to be negotiated and executed within the next week. One of those ways to do that is the next item on our agenda, which is the option to enter into executive session for us to talk about contract details. But with that, if it's okay with the committees, I'd like to invite Doug to the microphone and ask him a question. Welcome, Dr. Slaughter.
Thank you.
So you watched everything that just happened. Would you like to accept the appointment to acting superintendent as we've discussed?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And Doug, no pressure, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity if you wanted to make any kind of a statement or introductory remarks, or you're okay right now? Okay. All right, thank you very much. That was a lot to get to this moment. I want to thank everybody for all the work and time that's put into that, and for all the public input that we've received along the way. It was a better process for it. So now we have the next item on our agenda, which is option to move into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, acting superintendent appointment with no intention of returning to open session. So I was mentioning a moment before, this is an opportunity, should we wish it, to discuss amongst ourselves what we feel should be in the contract or changes and whatnot by ourselves prior to discussing with Dr. Slaughter. And sometimes in these situations, I'm just throwing out all the options. For some or part of it, sometimes the candidate, the person you're negotiating with is invited in. That doesn't always happen. I'm just giving you the full Monty. Jennifer?
I remain in favor of us staying in open session. We've come this far. We did the awkward part. Once the contract is finalized, it will be a public document and it will be visible by the public. And I think, given the amount of attention to this topic, I would like the public to be available, the public to be able to see how we got to the final document. That's my feeling.
Margaret?
Do we have a list of the things that we are going to have to talk about next?
So, it's one of the many acts of,
50 pages.
that he performed for us this week. Mark Terry sent us, and then I forwarded to y'all, a few hours ago, a sample contract agreement, that was the 4 or 5 pages. So we would want to go through that, review it, talk about anything else we had. It didn't have a name in it at that point, obviously. And there's some values we'll already have to change because there was just a placeholder in there for dates and whatnot. So, we could do this one or two. So it's a 4 or 5 page document. Assuming that's a template that we want to go on, we could either, we could either just, end things here and go and read that at our leisure and reconvene at a future date less than or equal to next Thursday. Or we could show the contract, we could project it up here, see how far we can get just in terms of people understanding it and reviewing it and seeing what kind of questions. We might not get through absolutely everything tonight, but we could maybe at least uncover the questions that we have. We could optionally also, regardless of how far we get tonight, we could ask the chairs to meet with Dr. Slaughter to see if there's something that he wanted in the contract that I don't know, he wasn't comfortable saying in public. I'm just kind of throwing out all the options for how we proceed here. But we obviously need to get it all signed by next Thursday. That's really the only that's the biggest driver. Any opinion?
I would like to have the chairs go ahead and do this final contract negotiations and to put out to the public all the boilerplate that's in there so that the public understands what's in there. There's not going to be any variation or deviation from that very much. So I am very much in favor of letting the chairs go ahead and do that and then coming back and having the full committee approve it.
Jennifer?
I believe Attorney Terry said, I could be wrong, there's so many emails going back. I think he said that the joint committees could empower a subcommittee to negotiate the contract. So that's similar to what you're saying, Irv, about having the chairs do it, but I'd like to be involved, so my suggestion would be to empower a non-quorum subcommittee to do the negotiating between now and Thursday.
But still have it, so go back, like meet with Doug Slaughter, meet amongst yourselves, and then come back here and then talk about what you talked about?
Well, I could be wrong, but I think Attorney Terry is saying we could have another 2-motion vote for the 2 bodies to empower a subcommittee to go negotiate the contract, and that would be, I don't know what the motion would be, but empower a subcommittee to go negotiate the contract, and it would be approved by the 2 bodies.
Yeah. No, I understand that. I was more asking like how do you feel about, so we've been as you've said, open session the whole time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll just say my 2 cents. I mean, there are some things that I think are appropriate for there's valid reasons for going to executive sessions that aren't all, we're trying to hide something. There's a reason for the law. And I won't go into chapter and verse about, all the reasons. However, in this situation, there's been so much lack of trust or suspected lack of trust of the process that we might as well, if we can, try and do everything in open session, even if we might not normally do this. So for that reason, I'm inclined to see if we can't finish this out in open session as well. So that being said, if we say at this point, oh, we empowered X number of people to go have a private conversation that's not in public to hash out the details and then report back to us, is that good enough? It's to me it seems expeditious because we could be here quite a while, and we don't want to rush things too, right? Once you get into contract minutia, but we could come back and say, this is what was discussed. These are the points, and now we're looking at the full contract in open session. Is that sufficient? I see Sarah Best, and then I see Allison.
So I think
you know, we've said so much, we've done so much of this process in open meeting. I think if we can go through the contract and if there are major revisions that we feel need to be made, I think we should do that here and then empower the chairs to go have a separate meeting with Dr. Slaughter if there are small tweaks that need to be made. And then come back. Does the Phil committee vote on it? How does that, is that what happens? Does that work?
So
Or is it
we've
not?
already voted the, I'll confirm this with Mark, but my understanding is that this is all the voting that the committee, I think this is all the voting the committee has to do, and then the region chair and the Union 26 chair sign it. That might not be the case. I'll validate that though. Actually, because it's a contract, we might have to. I don't know. Ben. I'm sorry, Allison.
No, you threw me. So I skimmed this. I was driving when this came out, so I hadn't seen this before now. But because we just voted some of the key components of a contract, namely compensation and term, and the fact that it's additional on top of an existing, presumably lengthy contract, this, in my mind, I'm comfortable just delegating to the chairs to discuss the final in open session, because skimming this, it's not complex. The key things we've already discussed in open session, so it's just fill in the blanks here, and give Doug the opportunity to advocate on his side in private as a personnel matter with the chairs. I will say, in terms of a negotiating subcommittee, I don't believe that we can have, I mean, I don't know, past practice, we haven't had joint subcommittees across two different committees. So I would say, if the region decides to appoint a subcommittee instead of delegating to Ben, then that's a regional school committee decision. But I don't think that school committee that subcommittee can act on behalf of
Right.
Union 26
Right.
with members that are not Union 26.
Right. I mean, if it was the chairs, I'm just trying to think about how to make it as inclusive as possible. We could certainly invite as much. So we have this document, right? Everybody has this document, and we can post it. It's just a template. We could get as much member input as possible. However much detail, and then we could use that to inform. Discussing, and then and then report back after our sessions with the committee. Report back after our sessions with Doug to the committees, and then also report back during open session. I don't know. I'm just trying to, if that's easier. Ben, did you have your? Sorry, my next.
Yeah, I'd like a sort of different point, but so here's my thinking, right? So as for like the public trust aspect of it, I don't think the public trust aspect deals with the minutia of superintendent contracts. So I'm comfortable with us going ahead and fleshing this out with copious input from our committee members, and then coming back and discussing it in open session, so that it's still open. And if people really are concerned with the minutia of superintendent contracts, they can come and witness that. But I don't think we need to publicly display the making of sausage.
Okay, Jennifer.
Are you both saying return to open session tonight?
No.
Yeah. For clarity, like maybe we come back Tuesday. We talk about this.
Yeah.
So at another meeting, we would come back, all of us together, and vote on the contract?
So that's what I was just trying to
Yeah.
answer, that I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if because we just voted, whether we actually have to vote the final contract or not. But, I mean, we were just talking about maybe adding a regional meeting Tuesday anyway. And this isn't a regional agenda planning meeting, so we can't talk about whether we should, but members do know in general that anytime one wants a meeting, they can reach out to the chairs. I'll just say that.
Yep, fair enough.
But if sometime before Thursday, whether that's Tuesday night or not. It seems convenient, but maybe not convenient for Sarah, but yeah, Margaret.
So would it be possible then to do something like joint Union 26 region just for that, and then to adjourn Union 26 go to region and have the meeting we were supposed to have last
Yeah,
week?
yeah, we did joint meetings like that all the time. I mean, we could put it at the end if we wanted to make Sarah wait as long as possible, but yes, that's fair. The postings sometimes look a little weird, but yes, you can do that.
Okay.
So is everybody cool with that? So Ben and I will get as much. So send your input to us as anything you want about questions, opinions about the various things that we have to fill in for the template, and then Ben and I will meet with Doug as soon as we can, and then report back to you all and to the public in our next open session. That sound good?
Yes.
All right. So we won't move. So we won't go into executive session. And if there is no further business or comments, then I move to adjourn Union 26.
Second.
Is that you all?
Second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Moved by Demling, second by McDonald's. All those in favor? Union 26 is adjourned unanimously.
I move to adjourn the regional school committee.
Second. And, oh, sorry.
Sorry. I just cut Tillman off by mistake.
You just did. You did.
You did that Tuesday.
You did do that Tuesday.
I think
Tillman
I
just
think we can just go ahead and
disappeared
vote.
into the
Sorry,
We're
nether.
going to
Tillman.
make the friendly assumption that Tillman isn't going to object to adjourn.
Just
So,
sent
roll
him
call
away.
vote, we'll go.
Was there a move and a
We don't need
Yeah,
a.
I moved, you seconded.
I
We can
seconded.
just raise our hand.
Yep, so all in favor of convening the regional? Convening, oh my goodness, adjourning. My bad. Yep, the ayes have it, we are adjourned.
Thank you.